Former Crawley manager John Yems has had his suspension from all football extended to the 5th of January 2026 after the FA appealed to an independent commission. It's the longest ban ever issued to someone in English football for discrimination. The FA successfully appealed after it disagreed with the original panel's finding that Yems was not a conscious racist. Yems admitted to one charge, but the original hearing found him guilty of 11 rule breaches related to racial discrimination towards Crawley players. Up until 2022, he was handed a 17-month ban. The FA said, "We strongly disagree with their original sanction, as well as some of the elements of their judgment, which we fundamentally believed were not appropriate for the severity of the offences committed by John Yems. We are pleased that the Independent Appeal Board ruled that specific findings from the Independent Regulatory Commission were unreasonable, as there were numerous examples of inherent and obvious racist language." Well, Jason Lee, the PFA's Senior Equality, Diversion and Inclusion Executive, said despite the ban being given to John Yems following the original hearing, the subsequent written findings essentially excused his language and behaviour as unconscious racism. Not only was this unnecessary, it was also dangerous. It sends a message that those in positions of authority can justify their behaviour if they claim not to understand its impact. That should never be accepted. It's the job of everyone in the game, particularly those in positions of power, to take responsibility for making sure they are educated. It shouldn't continue to be the job of those who are victims of racism and discrimination to adapt to an environment where it is passed off as banter or joking behaviour. We now need to make sure those excuses are removed. That includes proper training and education for all of those in the game, including those who chair and sit on panels such as that involving John Yems and who are responsible for making judgments in such cases. Joining us now is Yunus Lunat, who is the former chair of the FA's Equality Advisory Group and the first Muslim member of the FA Council. Thank you very much for speaking to us. What is your reaction then to today's outcome?
Thank you for inviting me again, Haley. Yeah, I'm really pleased with this outcome. I was on originally when the original decision by the Commission was imposed, and I'm happy to say I've been proved wrong, because I did say at the time that it would be hard for the FA to appeal that sanction. But I'm really pleased that I've been proved wrong, because it sends a powerful message from the FA that the FA do take discrimination seriously and will act on matters that are reported to them. I'm happy to say that I have consistently been a vocal critic of the FA, and my comments are always constructive in improving the game for everybody that's involved in football. But what I have consistently said is that FA do take matters of discrimination seriously, and when reported, they will always investigate, and where there's sufficient evidence, they will always bring a charge. And it's really pleasing to hear, because what it sends is a powerful message that these sort of incidents will never be tolerated, will acted upon. And what you've got to remember here is, it wasn't, the FA came in for a lot of criticism when this decision came out, which was regrettable really, because the charge was found proven, a sanction was imposed, but it was the supposed apparent leniency of the sanction that people weren't happy with. And secondly, the comments made by the original commission, and it's an independent commission, it's not the FA that actually decided the sanction, it's not the FA that determined that John Yems was not a conscious racist, it was an independent body, independent commission that made those comments. And obviously on the back of that, the FA have appealed that, and as I say, it does send a powerful message. And if I can say, and as I say, and I keep coming back to this, I have been a critic of the FA. But in terms of combating discrimination in sport, probably wider society, because sport is part of society, I have to say, and I have been vocal in this, that the FA have led the way in setting the standards and in taking appropriate action. So the FA really needs, this is an occasion where the FA should be applauded for bringing an appeal. Because it's not easy to succeed in an appeal. The threshold is very high for an appeal to be successful on.
Yeah, on that, you talk about this threshold being very high. I mean, how difficult is it in a case like this to be successful in appeal? Well,
if you study the written reasons here, the FA appealed on two grounds. Firstly, that the decision, the original sanction, was not just unduly lenient, it was so unduly lenient that it was unreasonable. And secondly, the other ground, which most appeals are brought on, is that it's a decision that no reasonable body could have arrived at. Now, that is a very high threshold. In many, many cases, you and I will disagree with the decision, but that's not sufficient. What needs to be, what the FA had to show, what that decision was so unreasonable that no reasonable body could have reached that decision. And what you've got to bear in mind is that it was already the highest sanction that had been imposed ever by a regulatory commission. So that threshold gets even harder to tip and succeed on. So it was a hard task for the FA. And as I say, the FA, this is an occasion when the FA should be congratulated for bringing this appeal and bringing a successful appeal, because the appeal panel have actually said, the appeal board have actually said that they disagree with the original finding that John Yems was not a conscious racist, because if one repeatedly engages in discriminatory behaviour, then at the time I said, really, it's for his peers to judge. But the appeal board have stated in no uncertain terms that such conduct does amount to being a conscious racist and racist and unacceptable behaviour.
And do you think today's outcome now actually will encourage more people to make sure they report issues and increase the faith in the disciplinary system if they do so?
I think there's a message has been lost somewhere, because if we take a step back, as I've said at my introductory piece, for a number of years I've been involved with this process since approximately 2014. When incidents are reported, they will always be investigated, and where there's sufficient evidence, they will always be prosecuted. Regulatory action will always be brought. But certainly, this sort of outcome will encourage people and give confidence in that process, and encourage people to report discriminatory behaviour wherever and whenever it occurs.
We've heard Kick It Out Chief Executive Tony Burner today saying that issuing a record ban is going to be a landmark moment. Do you think this moment will have that type of impact?
Well, you would hope so, but as I say, this process has been in place for many, many years now, and for some reason, it still seems to be the case, particularly at grassroots, that sometimes there's a lack of confidence in the process. So we need to work together to ensure that process, there's education about the process that's in place and what happens when a case is reported.
And what about this process, this long process? I mean, we hope that we never hear of people encountering this form of racism again. Unfortunately, it's still happening. So what lessons need to be learned from this?
Well, as I said at the time, I was really surprised how John Yems had been in the game for so long with views like this, behaviour like this, and never been called out. That was, to me, a very surprising factor of that case, as how he continued to operate for so long without being reported, without being found out.
Yunus, thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
OK, to the Premier League relegation battle. Everton travelled to Crystal Palace on Saturday without a win in their last four and only outside of the relegation.